Hello everybody and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. For today's video, we're going to be talking about the next year of Bitcoin's price action. Now, every single new bull trend starts with a reaccumulation period where we make higher highs and higher lows heading into the next cycle. And so everybody has been asking me, how much time is that going to take place? What is that going to actually look like? And how can we look to position ourselves and be ready to accumulate heading into this next year? This is going to be an important time for many people that are looking to reaccumulate, many people that are looking to add to new positions. And so for today's video, I'm going to be mapping it out in an exact way that I think is going to set us all up to make a lot of profit over the next couple of years. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And with that being said, let's jump right into this amazing video today. Now, before we jump into the analysis that I have for Bitcoin on the macro scale, we're going to be talking about what we're seeing in the short time frames for the crypto markets. Now, I talked about two different scenarios. Scenario one was that this entire consolidation was a wave 4, or scenario 2 where we actually see one deeper corrective wave back down and then start our final impulse back up. Nonetheless, they both show the same thing. This was a wave 1. This is a wave 3, we're inside of wave 4, and we still have one more final wave 5 to go before this impulse is over. Now, this is very important because nonetheless, what we've seen is a correction, and this is still an opportunity to be getting back into the market. And I talked to you guys a lot about that. I said that we're going to see a corrective wave inside of wave 4, and that will be a great opportunity to get back into the market. Now, inside of this corrective wave, I think that right now is a good opportunity to be buying, even if we do see the potential of one more low coming. And I don't think it really should matter that much, because if we do see that one more low, it's not going to be dropping that much, and chances are, unless you have buy orders on exchange, it's just going to wick, and it's going to be a very quick sort of event like this, and then we'll start going back up again. So I think it's important that if you haven't been accumulating throughout this correction, now is a good time to be doing so. Specifically for the people that weren't buying down here, now is your chance at a deeper correction. Many altcoins are at lower levels than they were, even throughout this consolidation. And so if you've been watching certain altcoins, if you've been looking at certain ones that you know that you want to get exposure to, now is a good opportunity to be doing so, because I do believe that we're getting close to our next major impulse where we, in my opinion, will be clearing above our range highs here that we saw. This is the total market cap chart. So we could actually just rally upwards of this high based off of the total market cap chart and then start our corrective wave back down, or even the total market cap chart could actually clear the range highs. But nonetheless, I still expect that whether we do something like this, we're still going to get a deeper correction back down pretty much around where this green box is. And that kind of takes us into what we're going to be expecting to see on our big picture, because I think it's very, very, very important that we talk about what is happening on the macro scale, because this is going to tell us, what the next year of Bitcoin's price action is going to look like, because I think it's very important that we understand this. If you were somebody that was accumulating down here at the support lows, I think that it's a good opportunity for our next impulse. When the rest of the market does this leg up right here, it will be a good opportunity to be taking profits, because we will go through a period of reaccumulation. And if we look at every single one of our previous cycles, I'm going to draw a data point from our cycle low on every single one of our prior bear markets so that we can get an idea of how the reaccumulation on our next cycle has played out. I think it's very, very important that we analyze how it looked so that you guys can get a better idea of how to position yourselves currently. So every single one of these dotted lines has been our bear market low. And if you guys notice here, from our very beginning of our cycles, after we have our bear market bottom, we start a period of reaccumulation. This reaccumulation takes us into the Bitcoin halvings, which is where we ultimately see the price action of Bitcoin go into new all-time highs. Now, I don't know the exact dates, but I know close enough to where they're at. And so our Bitcoin halvings are going to be green, and our bear market bottoms are going to be red. That was our first Bitcoin halving, was over here at around November. And we can see we get our next one over here in 2016. And in the summertime, and then we can see that we got our next one over here in 2020 around May. And so every single one of these points has been a Bitcoin halving, and I'm going to factor in how our price action has looked and how it actually is going to look inside of this current cycle. So our next one is projected to be sometime in April of 2024, and if you notice here, every single one of these reaccumulation structures has looked fairly similar, right? Fairly similar. They're not always going to be exactly the same, but they are very much the same sort of reaccumulation. And that's what I want you guys to understand here. Inside of our first cycle, we had our bear market. We made our first higher highs in the new bull trend, and we can see that based off of this uptrend right here. Higher highs and higher lows, reaccumulating off of an uptrend. Once the Bitcoin halving takes place, we start the breakout into price discovery. And the same thing happened in 2016. Even though we went through a longer period of sideways reaccumulation, it's still relatively the same sort of pattern here. We have our bear market bottom. We start our first breakouts into the bull trend, higher highs and higher lows. We get our Bitcoin halving. And then from that point is kind of where we start to see the Bitcoin price really start to distance itself and break out into new all-time highs. The same thing happened even into our last cycle, where we saw the bottom of our bear market. We saw a bigger impulse instead of two impulses, two higher highs and higher lows like we saw in these two cycles. We pretty much saw one big move and then one big sell-off. It was kind of the epitome of both of those moves all encompassed into one. And then we got our Bitcoin halving, and once again in the same sort of fashion, we saw after our Bitcoin halving was where the price action went into price discovery. So that's been the case throughout every single one of our markets. The only difference between this market cycle over here and our last one was the fact that we had a COVID black swan event. So we ended up getting deviation from this from our uptrend. But nonetheless, if you guys notice here, once we instantly reverted back to the mean, we instantly went back to the same trend line that we were reaccumulating off of. So I don't really think that this black swan event means that much. The only difference is that we had a black swan event, and so the market sold off in a much deeper way. But it was still pretty much on par with all of our previous cycles. We go through a reaccumulation period. We begin the very beginning stages of our uptrend. Once the Bitcoin halving takes place, we go parabolic. Same thing in 2016, reaccumulation on this trend. Bitcoin halving takes place, then we go parabolic. Pretty much the same thing happened in our last cycle. We start reaccumulating off of this trend. The Bitcoin halving takes place, then we go parabolic. And so in this next cycle, I am actually expecting that we'll see something similar to what we've seen in our prior cycles. The only difference here is I don't think that we're going to get this massive black swan event and we're not going to deviate from that trend. So what I've personally been talking about is how I think that our price action is going to be similar to what we saw here in our first cycle. Although it will be different in some way. There's not always going to be 100% certainty that the price action is going to just behave in the same ways. But I'm mapping these out for you guys just as a way to kind of explain how I think that the price action for Bitcoin is going to actually factor into this. And so with this cycle, I believe that we'll rally upwards of about 27,000 before we start our first corrective move. And so inside of this corrective move, this will be the very beginning of our new uptrend for Bitcoin, right? Now, it's going to look a little bit different. We might not even make this next breakout. We might just reaccumulate and go sideways. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. But one thing is for certain, we will start the next beginning stages of our uptrend. And every single one of our reaccumulation structures has been us creating a first beginning stages of an uptrend, as indicated by this trend line, where we start growing, we start building foundation, and then once we've built a strong enough foundation, that's what really catapults us into price discovery on the way up. And so far in every one of these cycles, we've seen the reaccumulation take place. Once we get the Bitcoin halving, that's the point where the market actually goes into price discovery. We start to see real parabolic price action. And so with this next cycle, I personally think that we're going to follow a lot more consistent with how we've seen in prior cycles. I don't think that we're going to see such a massive move off of the lows like what we saw in 2019. I believe that it will be a lot more consistent with this cycle here in 2015 and 2016 and this cycle here from 2011 to 2012. That's just my personal belief thus far based off of what our Elliott wave count looks so far. And with our Elliott wave count showing such clear impulses, I think that it's very obvious we finished wave 1. I believe it's very obvious that we're at the completion of wave 4. Even if we get one more low, it doesn't really change anything. This will just still be a 4-wave correction, and we still have another 5-wave impulse to come after. After this 5-wave top, we are expecting that we'll go through a period of reaccumulation, and that's been the case every single one of these cycles. If you come down in here, we can see a clear 5 waves up inside of this impulse. We can see a clear 5 waves up inside of this impulse, and we can see a clear 5 waves up inside of this impulse. Every single one of those impulses has had a period of reaccumulation where we have a corrective move on the downside. That was this one right here. That was this one right here, even though it maintained an uptrend. And that was this one right here, even though this one was bigger and about twice the size as both of these moves in one. I think that assuming that we don't see just this monumental move off the lows, which I'm not betting on personally, I believe that we'll go through a similar reaccumulation structure that'll be on par with our prior cycles. And if that's the case, guys, most likely we will be looking at a normal 4-year cycle to play out. If what we're looking at is higher highs and higher lows, us rebuilding a foundation, and then us being at the end of that foundation leading up to the halving, I would expect that we're going to play out and our halving will be, a bullish news event where we actually see a lot of speculation, a lot of people start buying because of that, and then the price action will most likely follow suit. Now, there is a bearish alternative that I want to say. Now, the bearish alternative isn't so much bearish, it's just the fact that it would be a shortened cycle, right? Where a normal 4-year cycle is 3 years up and 1 year down. We could actually see that our price action ends up front running a little bit, where let's assume that we're sitting at all-time highs or new all-time highs leading into this next Bitcoin halving. And if that's the case, that will be the first time we've ever seen that, because if we draw a line from where the halving was in every single one of these cycles, this is well below the all-time highs. Same with this cycle over here, well below the all-time highs. Same with our first cycle over here, well below the all-time highs. There's always been a period where our reaccumulation is leading us close to those all-time highs, but we still haven't made a new all-time high. The halving takes place, then we go into new all-time highs. If this cycle ends up front-running our halving and we're sitting at new all-time highs or close to those all-time highs, let's assume that we're sitting on support of the previous all-time highs, I'm personally going to be looking at our halving as being, an early warning sign that we're not going to have a sustained 3-year uptrend like a normal 4-year cycle. If we've already broken out and went to new all-time highs leading into this halving, I'm going to believe that this is most likely going to end up being bullish, but it'll be a quick impulse, and then we'll start our next bear market back down. And instead of having a normal 3-year uptrend, we would actually be topping prematurely, somewhere between 15 months and 24 months in length. And that would be what's known as a left translation. Inside of a left translation, we actually peak left of a normal 4-year cycle, where we would expect to see a peak 3 years into the uptrend, which would be a normal cycle. We would actually be peaking to the left side of that, and we would be having a shortened bull run. And if that's the case, what would follow after is a multi-year bear market. Instead of doing a normal 3 years up, 1 year down, we would do the inverse of that, where it would be 3 years down, 1 year up. And so I think that this is very important. And the reason I talk about this today is because of the fact, for the first time ever, we have actually started to see a lot of people talking about the 4-year cycle. I see people sharing charts about it on Twitter all the time. Back in the last cycle, literally the only people that were talking about it were pretty much me and Bob Lucas, and I learned everything from Bob Lucas. Bob Lucas was the first person to ever bring this to anybody's awareness. Nobody ever talked about 4-year cycles. Once I actually was part of Bitcoin Live back in the 2018 bear market, that's where I was able to learn about 4-year cycles, and that's where I started teaching 4-year cycles back to you guys on YouTube. Now it's to the point where literally so many people are on Twitter talking about 4-year cycles, which makes me feel like we could actually be at the point where it's no longer going to play out in the same way. The more people that start talking about a given form of analysis, the weaker that analysis gets. And I think that our last cycle was kind of an example of that with our halving. We didn't get nearly the same expansive move after our halving that we saw in our prior cycles, right? Inside of our last cycles, we ended up seeing 2 big impulses. That was the case here, leading into this impulse here. Same with this one. Here, and then this impulse here. In our last cycle, we only saw this one, and then this is our top right here, right? So it was very different from our last cycles. And so in the same way that I think so many people had all of their eyes and awareness on this being just an expansive move, even though we still got an expansive move, it wasn't like what we saw in normal cycles, where we get our first pullback after the halving, and then we get another high. We got this pullback after the halving, but we didn't get that secondary high like we've seen in all of our prior cycles. And I think that all of that has to do with the fact that every single cycle, the more people that focus in on something, the less likely that is to play out. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the case once again for this cycle. If that is the case, then I think a lot of that will be determined around what the price action looks like leading into our next halving. Because if we're sitting at new all-time highs, in my opinion, that is already showing that smart money is front-running and looking to take profits early. And if they take profits early and we're not into a full 3-year bull cycle, it will be a left translation. We would expect to see a multi-year bear market follow after. And so I would love to see a normal 3 years up. I'd make way more money inside of a normal 3-year uptrend. I know that you guys would do the same thing, but it's important that we factor in all different forms of analysis, all different scenarios so that we're prepared. And I think a lot of that is going to be determined around what the price action itself looks like heading into this next halving. So anyways, guys, if you found value in this, make sure you guys do me a favor and leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If you guys want to follow more analysis, see all of my altcoin picks that I ever talk about before I ever cover them on YouTube. We've been nailing tons of altcoins. You guys have watched me nail tons of altcoins. A lot of you guys have bought into a lot of these altcoins that I've talked about. And if that's the case, there's actually better entries to be provided on every single one of the altcoins I talk about on this channel before I ever cover them on YouTube. And so if you guys want to be able to get in on the ground floor, understand exactly what I'm talking about before I ever cover it on YouTube, links are going to be in the description to go ahead and sign up for my website on the Signal service. Links are in the description. It's going to be a one-time fee, lifetime access, as long as I'm running crypto, which I plan to do this forever, assuming that we continue to see 4-year cycles. And even after 4-year cycles, there's still many markets out there that are providing awesome opportunities, and I talk about those inside of the group as well. And so if you guys want to get access to that, you guys want to ultimately see what I'm investing in aside from crypto, even NFT picks, DeFi protocols, and whatnot, links are in the description to go ahead and sign up. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and with that being said, I will catch you in the next one. As always, peace out.